Hello, good morning to you all, and thanks for joining us on News Central Television. This is our special broadcast for the Ekiti gubernatorial elections 2022. The hashtag is hashtag Ekiti Decides 2022. I'm Benga Aborowa, and today on the program we will be giving you regular updates of happenings in Ekiti State, where we have our team of correspondents on standby in different parts of the city, ready to give us all the latest updates. And I'm not here alone today. I have in the studio with me researcher and political affairs analyst, Mr. Adini Kunu. Thank you very much for joining us on this special broadcast.
Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
So all is set, and INEC has deployed their teams. They said this will be the standard for elections to come in Nigeria. As we know, the situation report we're getting from Ekiti State right now is that electorates are checking their names on the registers, and sensitive materials have been distributed. Now, Mr. Adeni, what's your expectation for this Ekiti gubernatorial elections, and how would you rate INEC's preparation so far?
Well, you do not actually test a person's competence, especially if you have an exams ahead. It is until the person has rounded off the exams that you begin to talk about assessing the performance. Do not forget that two things are very key in these elections. The bi-model voter accreditation system is one, and for the first time, INEC to the 16 local governments of Ekiti has actually deployed different ballot materials, ballot papers. Color-coded materials. And I think that that's unique. But you permit me talk about the experience of people with regard to the bi-model voter accreditation.
Yes, how is it different from the smart card reader? Because I believe this is the first time the BVAS will be deployed.
Well, it has actually been test run in 3 elections before. September 11 of 2021, it was deployed for use in the Isoko Constituency 1 State Assembly elections. That's one. Secondly, we've also had it used at the November 9, 2021 Anambra gubernatorial election. The third time the BVAS was used was at the February 12, 2022 Abuja Municipal Council elections. These 3 occasions were the times that they actually used the BVAS.
And what was the feedback?
The feedback wasn't too commendable because for the BVAS, you cannot use any incident form. Don't forget that in 2015, former President Goodluck Jonathan would have actually gone to court for certain irregularities that happened with the card reader. The card reader is actually something that ensures that your card is validated.
And it belongs to you.
And it belongs to you. But when we talk about the BVAS, don't forget that there was a time during elections, you will come first, then later you return. So the BVAS incorporates validation of card and, of course, accreditation of the voter and readiness to vote. So it has a dual purpose use. Whilst it is very important to commend INEC's initiative to give the people of this country free and fair election, it is equally important to continue to resort to these particular machines or technologies that were imported. Do not forget that the card readers had lots of problems. In 2015, particularly Professor Mahmoud Jega, what we learned, Professor Jega's issue was that many of the card readers after use, they were kept somewhere for very long periods of time. Nobody surfaced them. Nobody did anything to them. Yeah. So until election time. But I think that the person of Professor Yakub now understands very well that we can't afford to do.
Now, let's look at the trajectory. So you test run a device, and some of the devices are not foolproof at the end of the day, and then you have subsequent elections. Have you seen an improved trajectory? And of course, it takes training and time for INEC ad hoc staff to also understand how the system works. Since it's undergone about 2 or 3 previous elections,
yes,
would we have a situation in Ekiti State where there will be an improvement on past outcomes?
It is very likely. There is nothing foolproof. Even the human health is not foolproof, and that's why at times we have to take care of ourselves. Anything that you make use of has a tendency of disappointing you. Our cars at times will not just want to go anywhere. At times you find out that your pen that you used a moment ago is not flowing in ink again. So because it is a fact of human existence that nothing is foolproof, it means you have to do double or triple check to ensure that it is in perfect shape or condition for use. I know that previous feedbacks at the 3 elections that I mentioned to you have actually given INEC that particular consciousness of tidying up any loose end. And I, of course, believe that as we go into the Ekiti elections, we will have INEC deal with it. But there is another thing that is important. At the end of the registration of people for their voter cards and all of that, Ekiti has in excess of 47,000 double registration. And according to INEC records, in excess of 193,000 registered so that they can actually do what is expected of them to participate in an election process. Now, INEC needs to improve its technological capacities with the device it makes use of, such that we prevent such numbers of double registration. If you went into a bank and you want to do that certain things, and your data is in the system, or you want to do certain things, there's a prompt message you get that this has been done before. I think INEC can upgrade whatever device they use to prevent such double registration. Because when it recurs, that simply means these people in question, this 47,000, close to 48,000, they can't even have access to their cards because, number one, those are put on the list where they say there has to be caution.
Yes.
So, so that's another thing.
So they're disenfranchised as a result of that.
101%, because double registration is not accepted. Yes,
now, can you, for the sake of our viewers, take us through the process of voting? What happens this morning in Ekiti State? So I'm an electorate, I want to vote for my preferred candidate. How do we go about the process?
In the first place, what INEC does, INEC ensures that the names of those that are eligible to vote, having fulfilled the process put forward, are able to do so. When you go to your polling unit, by the way, INEC has in excess of about 2,445 polling units for this election. Everybody needs to go first to check if your name is there, to confirm if there's a tallying of your name with whatever it is that is expected. Don't forget, everybody's voter card has a specific number. The polling unit has specific number. So you need to cross-check your name against all of the codes that INEC has on your card to see that it corresponds. Having done that, you move to where the BVAS itself actually gets you ready for whatever it is you want to do, which has to do with confirming what has been seen as the same thing that is agreed to by the system. It is after that that you can actually get ready so that when the voting is good to go, you can participate in that. But what is more important beyond the INEC side of the story is the attitude of the individuals coming to vote. But of course, those are the first things you have to do. So
voting happens, and then you move away from the police.
No, you can't take a walk these days in time. One of the things, don't forget that INEC, the first time INEC used what is called, there's a display system that INEC has introduced. INEC made use of it in the Edo elections. That technology is still available, where you're able to see what is happening to your political life real time. But I hope sincerely that INEC will be able to provide this at some of their major collating centers where they eventually take all those things to. But the first thing is for everybody who goes to that voting center to wait after voting has been concluded and ensure that they can actually put some writing down regarding the result
and cross-check. Okay, we have live pictures coming from Edo Ekiti, the capital of Ekiti State in southwest Nigeria, where voters are getting ready for the gubernatorial elections to cast their vote. I believe the registration process is still ongoing. Adeni, can you confirm that for me?
Yes, most definitely. This is the kind of picture you'd expect to see on an election day. And we know that voting usually makes every executive governor restrict movement of people.
Yes. Except
you're on election duty. So people that actually are on essential services are allowed alone to go to work. For instance, the security operatives would have to go to work. And as we know, 17,000 policemen and officers have been deployed for the election.
And 9,747 men of the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps. And that brings me to this question of elections in Nigeria. Elections are a civic exercise. You can see people just going about their day, easy, going to vote for their preferred candidate. But why do we see a highly militarized and policed elections when people are going about their civic duties? It's like going to church on Sunday. You don't go to church with 17,000 policemen and 9,747 men of the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps. It's 23 years of uninterrupted democratic experience. You would expect us to have mastered it, we're used to the process, to respect people's decisions. Why do we still have such a, like you can see in the pictures, this was men of the Nigerian police force patrolling Edo Ekiti yesterday in what they described as a show of force. Well, this is a democracy at the end of the day.
Well, it's a democracy, but there's an adjective preceding that democracy. It's a nascent democracy.
Nascent, 23-year-old child.
It's nascent. We have some people who are 40-year-old and have not grown up. So this is a nascent democracy.
Okay.
But when we talk about democracy, the context of the oppression of every democracy is what actually brings about the consequential action or the consequence of what we see. Why have I said this? This is it. In highly civilized societies, and civilized is also questionable because we've seen...
Whose civilization?
Well, yeah. So if you look at it, civilization has to be placed in context. Are we talking about political civilization? I don't think any country in the world is politically civilized. We saw what happened January 2021 in the US elections. Yes. So that tells you that the level of civility of everybody may have to be streamlined to how you act per time. So if we look at the context of it, so the context of election in this country is usually featured by disagreement, by violence, by people who really don't understand that when people don't want you in an election, it means you have to just take a bow and take a walk. And we know that there are stories to back up reasons why you have this. But you see, another question that has come out of this issue of police officers showing force here and there is that we don't see such detailing of men and officers of our security operatives when we have insecurity situations. It therefore means that people want to protect their political interests and the lives of people. Why have I said this? In 2018, preceded the last election in Ekiti State, there was a simultaneous challenge in Zamfara State as of that period. What we found out was, whilst they deployed for the last Ekiti elections 30,000 men and officers of the Nigerian police to Zamfara, where there was killing at that period, they deployed 2,000 men.
So there was a gap.
There was a gap. So it tells you that people want to hold on to power and they don't care about the lives of people. Anybody who has said that what I'm saying is wrong could go very far. About a year ago, we had the same challenge in a place like Niger State. They only said they deployed about 3,000. Niger State is the biggest by landmass in this country. And at the height of security problem, you deployed just about 3,000, so the biggest state in this country.
Now, is it a manpower issue or lack of foresight and intelligence?
Well, I think that intelligence comes as the base of every security intervention. You can't take away intelligence and understanding where you're going to. Intelligence is one. For instance, this Ekiti elections, there are lots of things that would have preceded this show of force. And I think that much of what needs to be done is that our security operatives need to do a lot of collaborative work so that they can achieve success. If you look at what we have, for instance, security, first, you're talking about, intelligence. Intelligence, then you have to also have people that have the capacity to, bring about an implementation of what your intelligence has said. A retired Navy Commodore in the person of Olaomi revealed in this country the amount of information that the DSS put together, but in actual fact, those information will never be put to work because when you have information put forward and nobody makes use of it, it is very inconsequential. So for these Ekiti elections, people who are violent already understand that as they have come into this election, they cannot afford to misbehave. But another thing that is very, very important is not misbehaving. Also, you should know that we have to limit the presence of force and let people understand that in civilized exercises such as an election, you have to limit the presence of security operatives so that people feel free and safe to go about their business.
Okay, thank you very much. Just hold your thoughts there. We have News Central correspondent in Ekiti State. We're going to join him live, and also we'll have Soliloquy Adele Balogun. She's right here in the studio with us for this special broadcast. Hello, good morning, Niyi.
Good morning, Benga. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Niyi, it's a long day for you and the team today. Can you give us a situation report of what is happening around you?
Just as you said, Benga, it's going to be a very, very long day, but I'm right here at Ward 4 at Edo Ekiti, the capital of Ekiti State, and we have 2 polling units in this particular building. There's the Jonathan Memorial African Church, if you can look just behind me here. The INEC officials were prompt today. They've been around since 6:30 with all the materials needed, and a lot of people are here. There's nothing like voter apathy happening because the place is jam-packed. I'll tweak my direction to my right-hand side as well, so you can see another polling unit on the other side. It's a very, very big polling station, having 2 polling units in the same building. I'm here with Tosin. I will come back to my left now. I'm here with Tosin, one of the residents who was here earlier to discuss or to give us more information about how the process has been so far. Good morning, Tosin.
Good morning.
What time did the INEC official get here this morning?
They are already here by 6:30 a.m.
How has been the process so far?
Everything is peaceful. Everything is good. We do the right now we're checking our names, number, so everybody line up. Everywhere is okay. So no problem, no issue.
Has any aspirants or candidates been here so far? Has there been some form of party disturbance?
No. Everything is perfect. No. Everything is going well. Everything is still perfect now. As at now, everything is peaceful. No anything that, no any rude, any bad thing. We are okay.
What about the police presence? Has it caused any
no, police, they are making everything perfect. Everything, no scare, no anything bad.
Thank you very much, Tosin. As you heard from Tosin, just as I observed as well, a lot of party agents are on ground, international observers from the ICPC. All of them are here just to ensure that the election is free, fair, and everyone gets to exercise their franchise. No sort of violence whatsoever, and it's peaceful at this Ward 4 in Edo Ekiti, polling units 1 and 2.
Hey, thank you very much. Niyi, what else should we be expecting in the course of the day?
Well, we'll be moving around just to check other polling units. We know that there's prominence for a particular party, which is the All Progressives Party in this part, but around to ask people who they might be voting for or who they want to give their franchise to as the course of the day unfolds. But I am not sure we should be expecting anything like violence, and voter apathy is certainly not out of it. We were at 3 polling units before we got here, and they were all as jam-packed as this. Everyone is here just to exercise their franchise. So compared to the global scale of the Nigerian issue of saying there's a voter apathy because people don't want to, no, it's not happening here in Ekiti. They want to vote, and they know who their candidate is, and they want to vote for their candidate.
It's nice to know that there's a huge turnout of voters, and there's definitely nothing like voter apathy in Ekiti State this morning. We'll keep our eyes with you, and we'll follow up on developing situations in Ekiti State. So thank you. We'll get back to
nothing like voter apathy. Yeah. Thank you.
And it's good to see Niyi and the crew out there as well. And I was listening to you and Adenikun as we were talking, especially the pictures of the military, the pictures of the high level of security. Mm-hmm. And I heard both of you talking about a nascent democracy. How nascent is 23 years? In most countries, a 23-year-old is legal to vote, to smoke, to drink, to buy a weapon, is responsible enough to get married, to have children, is paying taxes. How long are we going to continue to say that Nigeria is a nascent democracy and sort of use that as a cover? By the way, good morning, everyone. My name is Soliloquy Adele Balogun. I'm glad to be joining Benga and our guests here as we take a look at what is happening in Ekiti. But how long are we going to continue to sort of use that as a cover for the things we continue to see? Because there's no reduction.
If you look at the evolution of our election since the return to democracy in 1999, you'd agree with me that what you'd expect in a child that is growing cannot actually be seen as the characteristic or the features of our democracy. The ascendancy of violence, the accusations and counter-accusation when major elections are here, the litigations appears to be very incremental. You find out that the desperation of politicians and ultimately their irresponsibility in not fulfilling whatever it is that they've promised people. All of these things are reasons why we still refer to our democracy as nascent. The government in power has been there for well over 7 years right now, and in less than a year, the government in power should leave. The power generation, because let's understand this, when people assume positions of power in their capacities as delegated representatives of the people, you'd expect certain things to be done within a period of time. For the greater part of the period that the current political party in power came to office, there were lots of promises made. For the greater part of 2015 to 2019, they blamed the PDP for the country's problem. Now, let's give it to them that they did the blame game for 4 years. Electricity is less than 2,000. They promised about 40,000 megawatts or more. And if you look at it, in between that, this administration has spent about 3 trillion naira on electricity. And if you look, the previous administration that had the PDP years, especially Obasanjo, spent 16 billion US dollars. We haven't seen that improve. Electricity has never been supplied.
And that's just one microcosm of...
That is just one of the very
yes.
many things that we need. Let's say that New York generates in excess of about 50,000 megawatts, even South Africa. And these places have lesser population than ours. So when I hear people that have power talk about, celebrating 5,000, 10,000 megawatts, Lagos alone will consume more than all these megawatts they are talking about. So that is one part.
Yes.
Because Tolu was talking about why nascent, she was expecting a democracy to be mature. But democracy can be mature if the dividends of democracy
But then on the scale of it, Tolu, when you look at countries like the United States, they are over 200 years. So is that a valid excuse that, 23 years in comparison with a 200-year democracy?
No, this is it. If as a country, a system is begun by you, you'd expect us to allow excuses. But if you have models after which you could have prototypes,
yes,
I think we do not have to
even within Africa.
Even within Africa, you do not have to accommodate such excuses. Because don't forget, at some point in this country, especially the First Republic, this country basked in the euphoria of post-colonial delirium, and we practiced parliamentary system of government. But we started looking at the United States of America, especially the roles it played after the Second World War, enabling many African countries to be liberated. We saw that there's something we could take from their democratic system, and we adopted the presidential system of government. But one of the things we have not allowed to be assimilated by us is the ideals of people who appreciate democracy and the proper practice and consequential dividends of the same democracy. It is therefore very apt to say this democracy is even pre-nascent, because that's it for me.
Because, sorry, in terms of what you said, I feel like I want to be an analyst and answer also as well, because even when you look at 200 years and you compare it to 23 years,
yes, sir,
the technology was not there. And the roadmaps were not there. And as he said, there are other people who've done these things. Nigeria does not need to reinvent the wheel. So we can
leapfrog.
Exactly. Yeah. We can leapfrog with technology, and we can copy and paste and just make minor editing adjustments. This sort of concept where it seems like Nigeria wants to reinvent the wheel and do something new.
Let me give you this. One of the things that many democracies have done, and many countries of the world that is advanced, was that they sent people to go to countries to learn how certain things are done, and they do a proper understudy of their own country and look at how they can domicile it in such a way as to be accepted by their own people.
Chinese are experts at that.
If you look at China, China knows that the US gave the world WhatsApp. So China looked at how the messaging app works, and they went back to their country. China is about 1.4 billion plus people. China created Weibo. And China did one thing. China did a lot of features on the Weibo app that allows Chinese see their messaging system as theirs. And that is why if you ever went to China, you cannot use, of course, anything like WhatsApp except to circumvent the process. That is one thing that we see happen in China. And why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it's very key that every country that has developed, as a matter of fact, China did something that the US only recently got wind of. China, for a period of 10, 15, 20 years, was sent many people to the United States of America to do a serious understudy. They will pay tuition, sponsored unknown to the US government by Chinese government. They adopt a lot of technological innovation from there. They work for like 5, 6, 7 years in the US, and suddenly some of them that even have the American passport renounce their citizenship and go back to China. It's therefore important to understand that in this era of very strong competition, innovation in all spheres can be adopted by countries that believe that some countries are superior. And let me say this, we are refusing to move forward. In this country, you see in the north, let me tell you, in 2011, I did my voter card registration at a place called Samaru in Zaria. Whilst trying to get my temporary voter cards, which is now permanent, I saw children on the queue. And I told my friend, who was then at the Ahmadu Bello University, what nonsense is this? Can't people here who are adults speak against it? He gave me a hushed word. He said, if you did, they could just shout that you are inciting them and they'll turn it to religious violence. See, that is the kind of experience we should not have if we want this democracy to grow. At the 2015 election, 2011 I said, 2015 election, on televised programs, we saw children on queues with adults who were trying to vote, who were allowed to vote. Even if the parents and their guardians couldn't caution them, the INEC officer is complicit in that criminal act by allowing children who are underage to vote. And these are the kinds of things that don't make democracy grow. And when we see these kinds of things happen, it affects whatever I want to do with democracy. Now, a process that is already corrupt, a process that is already questioned, a process that is not free and fair, can never birth anything that is positive. And that's a fact of the matter. So
the example you give of what happened in 2011, I want to go to some of the conversations we have about INEC and safety and their security. So your friend told you in hushed terms that if you speak about it, you could end up being accused of trying to incite and there could be some kind of violence.
Yes.
So what do you think INEC officials in that kind of situation can do? Because they themselves are, in some instances around this country, are in places where if they reject somebody attempting to vote, it can become a larger thing. And we know the rules. There's not supposed to be police or military within the polling unit.
This is not rocket science. Every child captured will go into the INEC data bank. INEC can spare extra time and extra money and extra time to train people that are not from that region. You know, one of the things that will help us is first to have people that are very honest to manage certain things. It is obvious that there's an agenda. And let me say this so that people will not think I'm imbalanced in this analysis. There are people who are from the South. In the 2019 elections, we saw children come out to thumbprint ballot papers in Akwa Ibom State. So it is not only a problem of the North, it's a Nigerian problem. What INEC can do first is to identify, because for anybody who helps INEC to register, they have a name. INEC don't employ members of staff or ad hoc staff who are spirits. They are all from here. Because they have a name, that is one way INEC can deal with it. INEC can send them to jail, ensure that it's on televised programs and radio, so that those who intend to do the same can be cautioned.
And in situations where the security might be compromised, after the exercise, they can expunge those.
Quite frankly, that is what has to be done. For instance, the children that got registered and participated in an election, and INEC could see that there's a ward here, and this kind of thing happened, INEC can announce that this election has been compromised with council. There's nothing anybody can do. You can decide to go violent. You see, at times when we want to get serious about dealing with this kind of impropriety, the use of deterrence must be done in such a way that you don't look at whose ox is God. Yeah. If you are dealing with criminal intentions or criminal actions, you cannot begin to allow sentiment to overrule that if you want to correct it. So INEC, to a great extent, has also been a joker. Let me tell you one instance. Last month on the 27th, INEC announced on the eve of the PDP convention that it has added more days to the days for the primaries, having sworn with fire and brimstone that it was never going to do that. Now, a party that is a major political party had mobilized to site where they want to hold a convention. On the eve, where they cannot rethink strategies, you postpone it, favoring another party that has not held its primaries. And I think that INEC itself should show that it is not a compromised institute of state. Because if you look at it, that should not be happening. And this is not the first time. INEC told us about a server in 2019. And when they got to the Supreme Court, the excuse of not it being accommodated in the Electoral Act resulted in throwing out the man who took them to court up to the Supreme Court. These are concerns for any electoral umpire. And if any democracy must actually give its dividend, don't forget, the first dividend of democracy is not road, is not electricity. It is integrity and honesty.
The process.
Because the believability of the process is what will make many people become your foot soldiers and allow your plans and policies to work. That is also part of this issue.
Let's come to Ekiti State,
Yes,
where the elections are happening today. Looking at X-raying our nascent democracy, 23 years of it.
I object.
We've looked at,
I object.
We've looked at the security apparatus, the militarization of election process.
Yes,
another thing we need to look at is the quality of the conversation and money. So we have a lot of analysts have said it's going to be a three-horse race, but you can't really tell which policy is different from the other candidate's policy and all of it. And the electorate, and I've seen adverts, I'm sure Tolu can also testify to this, you know, telling people not to sell their votes. And 23 years into a democracy, why is money still a big issue for electorates?
All right, in 2009, the per capita income of Ekiti is about $1,200 for one person in a whole year. If you lived in the US, for instance, if you earn $20,000 a year after tax, you're a very poor person. Why have I said that? We must understand that certain things propel people to actually want to survive. And don't forget, poverty has certain family members, lack of education, lack of self-confidence,
opportunities.
Your social capital is also poor, because when you're poor and you do not have the ability to pull yourself up by the bootstrap, you remain at a strata of society. And these things are very key. Let us look at Ekiti and what it offers the world. Ekiti has nothing less than 12 solid minerals under its soil, gold inclusive. These solid minerals cannot be mined because the federal government, in its poor ability to understand that divestment in these times is very, very key, said it owns all the minerals under the soil, but it says it owns it. And we've talked about it. Yeah. The government cries on the one hand that, I'm talking about why people collect money during an election. If an individual, the per capita is $1,200 in a year, if you do $1,000, 200 in a year, you'd find out that that may not even be enough to give you at least the average accommodation for a calendar year. That is another thing. Then you're talking about moving around. You're talking about feed and clothing. You're talking about the basics of life. Don't forget also that this Ekiti is the same place where they evolved the saying, Tekako Sebe. It was never heard anywhere. This Ekiti was where we had first stomach infrastructure. These are symbolisms of lack. First initiated, the issue of stomach infrastructure was, of course, by Ayodele Fayose. In 2019, we had Tekako Sebe. There's something about Ekiti synonymous with the stomach infrastructure.
Well, Ekiti State is renowned for its level of education, its academics.
Yeah. Now, this is the problem again. It is one thing to be educated. It is another thing to be able to harness the potentialities that education has allowed you to have. How well do people infuse their knowledge into things that we can see in practical terms as something that is impactful? So Ekiti has unarguably produced the highest number of professors, but Ekiti has not realized that even the level of our knowledge quotient can be marketed to the world. Ekiti has 2 private universities. Ekiti has 1 University of Education, and of course, University of Education and Science and Technology. Ekiti has a state university. Ekiti has another federal university, Oye Ekiti. These are the universities and 2 polytechnics. Ekiti should have been able to do better because also in Ekiti, you have in abundance yam, cocoa, cassava, and some other crops like that. But let's also look at it. Apart from the solid minerals that I've mentioned, Ekiti actually has rare wildlife species. We have the Mona monkey. The Mona monkey is home in Ekiti and is home to Ekiti. And secondly, the Mona monkey from that same Ekiti was taken to Grenada. And in Grenada, wildlife is one of their sources of income. Why have we not done that? The great parrot is home to Ekiti in huge numbers. There's a rare species of buffalo in Ekiti. We have another rare species of chimpanzee in Ekiti. You'd have to ask.
You have the warm springs too.
You have the warm spring. Ikogosi is there. That is all. I'm talking wildlife. I'm coming to that tourism. To tourism. That's part of it. Now you also have a rare species of butterfly called the acre butterfly, home to Ekiti. Why don't we have Ekiti create a conservation center and ensure that the road networks to that center? I've been to the Ikogosi Spring. So when we talk about people being knowledgeable, why is it that all the professors in the state have not been able to say, okay, we have this. Can we have wildlife centers where people look at this rare species and make some money from it? Yeah. People are not thinking. I've been to Ikogosi. The roads there, not too good. Of course, in the city centers, Fireme has tried. But the roads that leads to where you refer to as tourist sites that are attractive, you could be stolen from there. Because at times at night, you don't even have lights to go there. And when we talk about tourist centers, you should be able to do that. So these are part of why Ekiti has itself as a state where people want to collect money to vote. We're talking about a state that has that high number of those who are knowledgeable. Why is it that Ekiti has not been able to evolve where that knowledge makes it the center of information technological the development in this country? So it's not enough to just have professors. It's enough to be able to translate your professorship to practical realities that benefit the people. So I think it is very important. Okay, let's just look at the governor of the state. You have a PhD in war studies. How have you been able to bring about certain paperwork and practicals that will help re-engineer the security situation in the entire Southwest, so that when they talk about the security innovation that you have brought, as somebody who understands conventional and asymmetrical warfare, so we have to be able to translate knowledge to practical problem-solving solutions provided for the people. So today again, it is likely that people will take Akon Lesebe. That means...
Yes, I want to translate for our non-Nigerian, non-Yoruba viewers. Tekako Sebe means use your thumb, vote, and you will get something out to be able to make soup for your family at the end of the day.
So these things are very critical. So as we go into this election, don't also forget that we have a former governor in the person of Segun Oni.
Who is back again. But why would we not expect him to come back when... Ayo Fayose came back?
No, Ayo Fayose came back because he didn't complete what he left at the government house before. He rounded up the second tenure. And don't forget, people have said this about the PDP, about the APC. And let me also say this. Zenith Labour Party was in the race. Their candidate happens to be Akin Adolu, but eventually Zenith Party transferred their political destiny to the APC. And I know you don't transfer your destiny without money changing hands. Let them tell it to the gods of the space, that money never changed hands.
Maybe they found some convergence and some similarities in their ideology. In their political ideology. We can never tell.
Well, that may be one. But if you look at it, Biodo Yebanji up on the Thursday, and something that made the news was that it wasn't good. Biodo Yebanji, of course, is of the APC. He is the leading person to take the APC, hopefully, to the next political life of Ekiti State. Oyebanji, there were news making the rounds that Oyebanji actually won't be part of the election because there was a faulty primaries held in Ekiti State. And it took the Federal High Court in Abuja to state that we don't have such case before us. And the people putting such information out, really they are detractors of the process. That's one. Now, the first governor of the state is supporting, obviously, is an APC chieftain, will be supporting Biodo Yebanji of the APC. Then we are talking about Segun Oni of the SDP. Don't forget that the SDP has a history in this country. The June 12, 1993 election, the flag bearer of the SDP was MK Abiola. And MK Abiola really would not have chosen the horse party because the NLC was the bird party, according to what we have, if that party didn't offer anything. But what the party is going through now is more than convulsion. The party has not held any national convention since 2020. The party, as we speak, doesn't have a national working committee. Up until last week, we had a faction of the party and lots of young pepper scatter, as we have it in politics. In quote, that is a problem for that party. Now, for Segun, a former governor who believes he still deserves another 4 years, Segun is a perennial participant in this election. And because he's a perennial participant, certain people still believe that he has something to offer. In the debate they held last week, Segun promised 100,000 jobs in his first year. If you ask me if it is possible for him to realize what he intends to do, I say yes. But oftentimes, talk is cheap.
We don't interrogate the how.
Action is expensive. While many of them will tell you that they don't have to reveal to you how they want to bring the past. But I think we can take a cue from the many promises we've had, like restructuring, whose definition is still very confusing. August of 2018, the El Rufai-led committee had rounded off everything with the restructuring issue. The paperwork is gathering dust at the presidency. So if we look at the person who wants to give 100,000 jobs, don't forget the APC promised 3 million jobs every year. 3 million jobs every year. That is also referring to what the APC promised. Now, was he having a challenge on that? Now,
before we get into this,
we
get into this, we have Nee standing by for another interview, and there are a number of issues that we still want to take on. What are the issues for the voters in Ekiti, as well as the preparation? There have been some concerns about how the polling units and how the number of registered voters line up. So Nee is standing by right now.
I believe Nee is with an official of the NSCDC.
Yes.
Hello, Nee. Can you give us a situation report on where you are in Ekiti State?
Okay, so I'm here with the NSCDC boss, and I'll just let him give his own assessment just as we get more information as it unfolds. Good day, sir. What has been your assessment of the election so far?
So far, so good. It's been smooth. The turnout is very impressive, and for now, there is no any negative incident that we've recorded so far, and the voting has commenced peacefully.
That there's been a massive deployment of your men in and around the state. What informed this decision?
To ensure that we have a very free and fair and very secured atmosphere for the election. You know, Ekiti election is more or less an isolated election, so we don't want to give room for any security breach during the election. That's why we deploy massively. And you can see that the armed men are never near this area. They are somewhere else that they can be called upon for anything. But so far, so good. It's been very, very peaceful.
I noticed that we are working in relation with all the security agents in these environments. But one thing was sure that even before now, there were pockets of violence in some places. How have you been able to man this down and ensure that it's not going to happen?
Yeah, just like you said, we've deployed massively. And again, most of the flashpoints about, we have our intelligent officers who are on covert operation. For that reason, we have adequate information about those areas, and we ensure that we have. In fact, even the flashpoints we are talking about, we are not even deploying just for the sake of those. You know, when you identify a place as a flashpoint, before you know it, these flashpoints, these people will move from those areas. So we deploy in such a way that we consider every other place as flashpoints. So that we have a peaceful, and we have at the back of our mind to ensure that there is no area we don't cover. So we ensure that we have a very free election.
Okay, the IGP mentioned, or the spokesman to the police mentioned yesterday, that there will be some color coding to ballot boxes in different local governments. Is your agency aware of this?
Of course, we are aware.
Is there any way this will aid you from curbing ballots and snatching from areas?
Of course. Yes.
All right. You've heard it from the NSCDC boss, Chief Aruno, and he has given prompt information about the fact that there's adequate security, and this is just one of the agencies on ground, even aside the Nigerian police and other paramilitaries that we saw on ground right here.
Okay, Nee, just before you let the NSCDC officer leave, can you please ask him if there's cooperation, interagency cooperation amongst the NSCDC, the men of the Nigerian Army and Police? and FRSC, of course.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to ask him. There was an interview that just hijacked him here. So far from what we could get from him, he was able to establish the fact that other security agencies are here and they are in one way in six. Just one last question, sir. How interagency aid? Okay, I'm sorry. I actually hijacked him from one of the media stations after a lot of play. But one thing is sure, he's been able to establish that there is calm, there is peace everywhere, and there's been some sort of connections within the security agencies. But that's all I have for you for now. Of course, if I have more, I will let you know.
All right, thank you so much, Nee. And one of our correspondents there in Ekiti Live, the NSCDC boss, saying that it's been quite peaceful since they started the voting, that they have heard about the flashpoints of violence, but that they have officers on covert operations who are covering those places, but they're not announcing where the flashpoints are, because he made a very valid point. The moment we announce that this is a flashpoint, they'll go somewhere else, and that one too will become a flashpoint. But Adeni, we're talking in terms of the governorship candidates and some of the issues that we're facing. But I want to come back to a point, because when it comes to elections, we typically hear this phrase that is very popular from the United States. It's the economy, stupid. And the question for me with Ekiti voters that are not even 1 million, we'll get into the numbers in just a bit. What are the issues that Ekiti voters are actually taking with them when they're making the decision as to which party they're going to put their thumbprint for?
Okay, I want to latch onto the discussion that your correspondent had, where he actually interviewed somebody who is a security operative. Bisi Kolawole is the candidate of the PDP in this election. And at the debate they had last week, he talked about security as his priority. We know that that probably might have been informed by the Owo attack.
Yes.
And the state also declared 3 days mourning in solidarity with Governor Edo of Edo State. And let's say this very clearly, that security is key for anybody who wants to take any position of power, especially as the first citizen of a state or the person who occupies that same position at the level of the presidency of a country. I know that with the attacks we had, and if you listen to what Mr. Akeredolu said yesterday, where he said we have failed and some people have support, it tells you that somebody who can guarantee their safety will really, really make a lot of sense to them in these times. It is very obvious that it is not what we see on the surface that is happening, because when repeated deaths become the everyday experience of the people, then you have to speak to that issue. Now, what is the distance of Ekiti from Lagos or the Ondo from Lagos? Yes. If your car is good, even with the bad roads, you should be able to get to Ondo in 4 hours. If not, make it 5. What is the distance of Ibadan to this place? That is in less than 2 hours. It therefore means that security should be priority for anybody. And I think that that is one thing. Nobody, the reason many states of the north appears to be losing investment is because security is not guaranteed. And those who have decided to stay put in the northern part of the country, they have a way of making it up at the end of the day and balance their books. But I must tell you that nobody comes to a place with an abundance of mineral resources if safety of lives and property cannot be guaranteed. And that is one thing I would say. It's the foundation. It's the foundation. So for the Ekiti election, they'll be looking at somebody that has the capacity to protect their lives. Then secondly, we have to try as much as possible and reduce the suffering of the people. In these difficult times, I still see the president or the presidency increasing what is paid, on things imported to the country, to the port. I think that people need to tell these characters the truth about the suffering of Nigerians, and it is very key. Every time there's a challenge, the government just thinks of taxing the people. Mr. Godwin Emefiele was the one that brought two-way deduction. If you send money, they deduct money from you. If you receive money, they deduct money from you. If you haven't paid your taxes from that amount. And really, I think that sometime, Emefiele will be taken to court on that. There's a case in court, even put in court by Barrister Evans Ofeli that I'm aware of. And so that and later they will have to explain that. In truth, this country needs protection of lives and property. And it becomes even ridiculous that the security operatives of the country appears to go to sleep anytime they move ammunition. Ammunition is not something you put in your pocket. You transport ammunition from a region to the country. And let me say this again. It is not convenient for people to move ammunition in the forest, no matter how good the forest is, because you need it to move in numbers. So it therefore means that some people in the nation's security operation are actually compromising and are doing things in cahoots with those that are killing. Their agenda may not be put in words now, but it appears as if some people have some agenda somewhere. And let's say this very clearly, this country belongs to everybody. And until the entire southern governors also resolve to speak against this evil without fear or favor, we'll continue to actually have to suffer this. It's very terrible.
Okay.